Hailing frequencies open and welcome aboard Treks and Tangents. I'm your co-host Brian.
And I'm your co-host Jaci. I'm the Star Trek newbie who treks off on tangents.
And I'm your Star Trek expert who is here to get the tangents back on track. Each episode we watch and talk about a different Star Trek episode. And this week we watched
Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 18, Arena.
The Star Trek episode with basically 2 plot points in one. Thank you all so much for choosing to join us on another adventure. Thank you everyone who's been listening, liking, subscribing on the various channels, commenting where you do. We really appreciate all the support. And don't forget to share the podcast with a friend, another Star Trek fan, someone who wants to listen to two geeks talk about Star Trek, one a little more knowledgeable than the other.
Very much a new geek.
So thank you all so much. We'll start off this week's episode as we always do by revisiting last week's Turbolift tease. That was where we gave Jaci the title of this week's episode, and Jaci, without any other information, gave her prediction, or more like a guess, to this week's plot. So computer, what was Jaci's prediction last week?
Jaci's prediction last week was, for Arena, I think Kirk will meet someone that he has to have a bet with. And if he doesn't win this bet, someone else that he chooses from his crew has to be a stand-in for him and do an event.
So Jaci, how did you think your prediction went?
I did pretty well. I mean, we are doing one-on-one, except there wasn't any gambling, and no one had to be substituted.
The two main portions of your prediction. We're going to have a hard disagree on this week.
He still had to meet someone and have a conversation, a fight.
Yes, yes. I would give you more credit if you had said that Kirk was going to have to stand in for him to do an event. Kirk standing in for himself. That would have been more on target.
I'm getting the feeling that Kirk wants to be involved in all the things.
Yes.
He never lets other people be in danger. How rude.
Yes. It's actually an interesting comment or observation. Looking forward to the Next Generation in the pilot episode, when Picard meets his second in command, Riker, there definitely is a character building moment between the two where Picard is talking about he doesn't want his second in command to interfere with Picard going away on away missions and on away teams, that he believes as captain he should be going on away missions, and Riker has a slightly different opinion that it is his responsibility to keep the captain safe and the captain should be on the ship. I agree, Kirk definitely wants to be in the thick of things.
Like a hero.
And it definitely establishes a theme throughout the rest of Star Trek of when the captain wants to go off on adventures and put themselves in harm's way, balanced against the responsibility of their commitment to the ship and the safety of the crew of the ship, which we see in other examples. We see that here when Kirk orders Sulu to do everything he can to protect the ship, including leave if necessary, and abandon the away team.
Exactly. I mean, and then we also see the amount of trust he puts in Sulu, because he's a well-educated fighter. Educated, probably the wrong word, but he's been through all the wars and fighting, so he knows what to do.
Right. Ignoring the behind the scenes where there was no off-branching in Star Trek where Sulu would become a captain because William Shatner didn't want that to happen. That's a fun side story we'll go down at some point later.
Sulu was going to get promoted?
Well, there was, we'll get into all the details, but there was talks and discussion and ideas and brainstorming of Sulu advancing and becoming captain, and Kirk shot it down. Kirk, I should say William Shatner, the actor, not the character. And it resolves itself later on in Star Trek. It's a fun character arc, but specifically, before we go too crazy in our tangents at the start of the episode, Jaci, what were your initial impressions specifically for this episode?
I actually found this episode kind of boring compared to all of the other ones we've been watching.
Okay.
But I got to see a new alien and learn about a third set of aliens who, again, underestimate the will and the spirit of the human. That seems to be an ongoing theme also, that humans are this awful predator, but then we have to show that, no, we're nice and compassionate.
Sure. Absolutely a ongoing and recurring theme. We see that this episode with the Metrons. We saw that last episode to a degree with Trelane in The Squire of Gothos. It's the focal point of the pilot episode of The Next Generation, with Q putting humanity on trial, is going to be a trope and a theme that Star Trek returns to time and time again.
It's an interesting subplot.
It is. I'm on the fence with Arena. This is an absolute timeless episode. The Gorn alien and the alien suit is so iconic to Star Trek. Ironically enough, because the Gorn would appear in this episode and we won't see them again for a very long time in Star Trek. This is not going to become a regular species that they return to. But at the same time, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is like 2 episodes and 2 plots squished together and crammed together into a single episode. If they wanted to, they could almost do this as a 2-part episode where they could expand on both plots. We could have a longer episode that focuses solely on the colony and the destruction of the colony by the Gorn. They could escape, cut, new episode, the fight, the arena, the Metrons, and so forth. They could have even broken it up in just 2 separate episodes and not even done a part 1 and part 2. They could have absolutely used this and broken this up and had this as 2 plot points, 2 episodes throughout the first season, multiple seasons. It really just does feel like 2 episodes squeezed in together at once.
I definitely see that vision, but I did not think that the Gorn itself destroyed the planet. I thought the Metrons created this planet so both of the 2 captains could have life and be able to kill each other, ironically, kill each other so that they'd get over it and move on.
No, so
Oh my gosh, I'm wrong from the beginning.
Does this completely change your perspective of the episode?
Yeah, because I really like the cute little alligator who happens to be the reptilian mascot for many cults.
No, so the elevator pitch to the episode, the planet that the Earth colony is on, Cestus 3, is actually in Gorn territory, or what they view as their territory in space. The Gorn view that as an act of war, which is why the Gorn come to the planet to destroy the colony. They're driving out invaders in their mind. The Federation, the humans, have no idea that they've done this. The Gorn run away and are retreating back to somewhat their home planet, further into their territory, whatever. As they are escaping and the Enterprise are pursuing, they enter the territory of the Metrons, who view them as hostile invaders themselves. That is why the Metrons take the captains of the 2 ships and put them on a planet, an asteroid, whatever it is, and they have their fight. So so it really is 2 episodes in one. The colony planet and the planet that they fight on are 2 completely different colonies. I think they're filmed in the same place in California, but they are 2 separate planets.
Oh, okay. That makes sense why one crew goes down to help the broken colony, and then Kirk and the Gorn captain are zooted off to another place.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So yeah, and you can see where this would be, in my mind, ideal for 2 separate episodes instead of squishing everything together in one. We'll get more into how this plot, this script for the episode is written and where it comes from later on at the end in our Triple Tidbits. But again, I'm on the fence. It's such a beloved episode, but it's beloved because of the second act, or the second half of the episode, the fight with the Gorn.
Yeah.
No one ever thinks about or talks about the front half. They don't even talk about the Metrons in this iconic episode. Everything comes down to the fight with Captain Kirk and the Gorn. Everything else just kind of falls into the background. So I'm on the fence with it.
No, I completely see your point now. And yes, it could have easily been a two-parter.
Yeah. With those thoughts, why don't we just jump into it so we can maybe untangle the plot of the episode further in your mind as Jaci looks worried as I've just upended her entire understanding of the episode?
Yeah, I gotta, hopefully I don't mess this up now.
So we'll have some corrections along the way. We'll straighten out the timeline here.
Yeah,
But
it's kind of knotted up like some yarn.
so Jaci, why don't you walk us through the episode?
Alrighty, so we are actually in the transport room, excited because we're going to have a feast that is being prepared by Commodore Travers. Oh, I'm sorry, Commodore Travers' chef. It's amazing, I assume, because they're all happy and excited.
So the Commodores, we can flash back to the menagerie. The Commodore is basically a person who is in charge of a colony or an outpost. Think of them like a mayor or president, and not so much in charge of starships, but in charge of a colony. The away team that's about to beam down the Enterprise has been invited to the colony by the Commodore as an invitation. The crew that's beaming down is looking forward because the Commodore has a reputation of being a foodie, is what we would call it today.
Whoop, whoop.
And so they're looking forward to great food. They're joking about this idea that he would have brought his personal chef to serve with him at the colony so that he would have access to fantastic cooking. So it's less of a feast is being prepared to celebrate anything and more just we've been invited over to dinner by the Commodore, and that guy likes to cook.
But he's being deceptive because he keeps telling Kirk that he needs to bring the tactical people.
Right. So, and the Enterprise crew doesn't really understand why. We'll learn very quickly why. But that is Spock is the one who raises the question as to why it's important to bring the tactician people with the away team. Kirk is dismissive of this request, saying he is a Commodore of an outpost that is isolated, they're vulnerable, they're open to attack. So just to consult. McCoy, who's also present, does not care. Just is looking forward to the meal.
Yes, he's like, no MREs, woohoo! So then off we go, down to the colony.
So, and the away team consists of
Spock, McCoy, Kirk, and 3 other dudes. I have no idea what their names are.
So the other 3 dudes, the 3 amigos, as we'll call them.
Okay.
We have crew member Lang, who's in a yellow shirt, Kelowitz, who's in a blue shirt, and O'Hearley, who's in a red shirt. So the whole rainbow of the uniform.
So question, how do we know that they're tactical if they're all in different colors? That doesn't make any sense to me. Or do they just choose their cute little outfit for the day and say, oh, I know how to do that?
They definitely don't choose their outfit for the day. Their colors correspond to their ship duties. Yellow would be command in the original series. So these are going to be leaders. They're going to be people who coordinate. They're going to be people who
lead.
We have the blue shirts, which are science.
Okay.
And then we have red shirts who are more along the lines of engineers, Scotty, or
security.
Security would be another example of a department that wears red shirts. So why do we know that they're quote unquote tacticians? We don't get into it in the episode. We can surmise that whatever department they are serving under, they fit that description. So perhaps the yellow shirt Lang is in charge and has experience and is high enough rank to talk about navigation, sensors, things like that. Science, who knows? Medical, could be anything. And the red shirt, again, could just be someone high ranking enough in security and arsenals and weapons and so forth. So,
Okay. So they beam down, all of them, and they learn, and see that this colony, Cestus 3, is rubble. Nothing. No feast. Nobody's there. And we have our opening credits. When we come back from that, as we look around all the rubble, the Kirk surmises that all the communication about dinner and a feast was a fake. It was like a trap.
yep, specifically to lure the Enterprise to the planet, to the colony.
So Kirk sends out the 3 gentlemen that we just named.
The 2 gentlemen, he sends Lang and Kellowitz out to look for survivors, but O'Hearly he has stay with them.
And Spock has a box that is called a tricorder, and it seems to be able to do anything that they need in every episode. And it's telling him that there's a survivor near, or live person, something.
A survivor, a human.
So they find the human. McCoy checks him out and reports that this poor guy is in shock. He has radiation exposure. He's bleeding internally. He's on it. He's on his deathbed. But we need to keep him alive so he can tell us what happened.
Right. It's mentioned at some point in this exchange that he's got about 30 minutes to live, unless they can get him more substantial treatment than what he can receive from McCoy there in the rubble of the colony.
So Kirk sends out O'Hurley to go investigate what these cold-blooded beings are. And then he is vaporized from missiles and other artillery. Spock is using the tricorder and determines that there is life on the colony. But the readings that he's getting are cold-blooded beings, not of the human variety. So Kirk sends one of the red shirts, O'Hurley, out to investigate what are these non-human life forms. And as he's out there, he is vaporized by someone off screen. Then the entire group is attacked by missiles coming from who knows where.
I think they're mortars, but yeah.
Oh yeah, because they have the shells and stuff.
Well, and there's the high-pitched whistling as they fall right before they explode.
My dog really liked that part. Kirk calls up to the Enterprise, and Sulu reports that the ship is also being attacked by an unknown alien ship. So Kirk tells Sulu to keep all defenses up and to ensure that the Enterprise is safe.
Well, and specifically, Kirk is calling up to the Enterprise because initially Kirk wants to be beamed up and out of the attack on the planet.
Yes.
The fact that this alien ship is attacking the Enterprise means that Sulu had to raise its shields, and the transporters don't work through the shields, so they can't beam them up. Sulu suggests lowering the shields momentarily to beam everyone up, but Kirk views it as too big of a risk to the Enterprise.
Oh, like that little slip in the door by some random. Smart. So Kirk tells Sulu to return fire on that alien ship with all the phaser banks, but they have no effect on that other ship. On the planet, Kirk and the others are moving the survivor into a better area of cover. Then Kirk orders 2 members that we forgot the names at the beginning to spread out so that aliens don't attack them. Go to flank them. Kirk is torn though. He feels that he needs to be on the Enterprise to ensure its safety because it's his ship, but then again he is stuck on the colony, unable to do anything for his men and women. Spock reminds Kirk though that Sulu is an experienced combat veteran and he will keep the ship safe in the absence of Kirk being there. Kirk asks Spock if he knows where the arsenal is for the colony. Spock points out, though, that while it's 100 yards away, it may be destroyed because of the attack already on the colony. Kirk decides, though, that he's just going to risk it and starts to run straight out to the arsenal, out of cover, and he's immediately ambushed by more falling mortars. He takes cover in the middle of the open space, like behind giant boulders now, and calls back up to Sulu to check in. Kirk encourages Sulu to keep fighting, use the photon torpedoes, phaser attacks, everything against the alien ship so that the Enterprise is safe. Sulu needs to do everything he can to keep the ship safe, even if that means leaving the orbit and running away. Sulu realizes that the fight is hopeless against this alien ship, and he follows orders and takes the ship out of orbit. In the rubble at the colony, Spock runs and rolls. I thought that was really cute, that choreography. And to Kirk from McCoy's patient, because McCoy is still with the other colony survivor. Spock realizes that the attacks have somehow connected themselves to the tricorder. Like they know where they are. So he throws the tricorder away to hopefully the attack will be guided away from them.
Yeah, specifically the attackers have figured out, and somehow Spock gives a very muddled explanation, but they locked onto the signals that were coming out of the tricorder in its scans and fed it back into the tricorder, which I think partially allowed them to triangulate and direct their mortar attacks, but also specifically we see the tricorder smoking, so it overloaded the tricorder. I think this is to give some kind of context and clue to the audience that when we later see who the attackers are, a giant lizard wearing caveman clothing, that these are actually beings that have technological knowledge and are an advanced species.
Kind of like Bluetooth. Kirk, though, is able to find a grenade launcher within the arsenal area, and they set it up to fire what looks like blue softballs, at least what the grenades are shaped like, and they launch one in the direction of the attacker. Boom!
It's a pretty big explosion. It definitely is more than just a simple grenade or mortar round. It is a giant flash of light. It is a very large and powerful weapon. It's such a powerful weapon that all of the attacks and mortar shelling from the attackers against the colony and the away team stop. Sulu calls down to Kirk and says that the alien ship is moving away from the planet and that Sulu and the Enterprise had detected transporter beam signals from the alien ship, implying that they have beamed all of the attackers back onto the ship and that they are running away. And this is where I have a minor problem with the plot of the episode. So this whole sequence of events implies that the attacking aliens were scared off by a single attack from this
blue ball.
Does that mean that, well, one, it's interesting that they would be scared off by a single attack. Two, did the colony not get to use any of these weapons in their defense? This is the first time that they've seen this weapon, maybe, because they caught the colony off guard. I just find it very interesting that this is what would cause them to call off the attack to run away. But regardless, Kirk orders an away team of 30 medical personnel to beam down to search through the rubble of the colony to look for survivors. And then the Enterprise takes off in hot pursuit of this alien ship.
In the Enterprise sickbay, Kirk asks the survivor that they had downed first for more information. His face is very badly burned, and he exclaims that the beams were like phaser beams, but worse. I've never felt a phaser beam, so I imagine that'd be really hard.
I imagine.
He explains that they allow ships to use their facilities to rest, stock up, kind of like a truck stop while they're traveling. But this ship didn't do anything nice. They just knocked out everything that the colony had, even its protection, like phasers, and didn't let them surrender at all. They just, boom, destroyed them. The ship didn't even let up on its attack when the people were begging for the lives of the women and children in the colony.
Right. They didn't allow the colony to surrender.
And then Kirk asks about the messages that they received, and the man reports that it was 1.5 days ago. Why would the alien ship attack them? It was a trap to attack actually the Enterprise and its crew, since it was the only ship that can provide protection in the section of Federation.
So, giving knowledge that these aliens had advanced knowledge of the operations of the Federation. They had knowledge that the Enterprise was in the area and some knowledge of the operation of the Enterprise. Otherwise, why would they attempt to lure the crew and the ship there?
I mean, Spock does try to play the devil's advocate, like, that can't be the only reason for an attack. There has to be more reasons.
Foreshadowing.
And Kirk retorts, like, how can we be able to explain a massacre like Cestus 3? There's just no explanation. Thinking hard, Spock finally relents and counters with locating the alien vessel before it returns to its original home base. That way they can get more information. Kirk plans to hide Enterprise's strength in order to overtake the vessel. Spock isn't really into this idea, but he's listening. Kirk then calls to Sulu and asks if the alien ship is still going warp 5. I'm assuming warp 5, 6, 7, they're all like miles per hour speed.
So warp factors or warp speed is a measurement of speed. It is much faster than miles per hour. So each warp factor is obviously a higher number is a faster speed, and it's measured not in miles per hour, but it's measured in comparison to light speed, or the speed at which light travels. So as an example, warp 1 would be the equivalent of the speed of light. You would be able to, at warp 1, traverse the distance between the Earth and the Moon in 1.33 seconds.
Wow.
But then it increases in speed exponentially as you go up. Warp 2 is not twice the speed of light. It is 8 times the speed of light. So the same distance from the Earth to the Moon would be cut down to from 1.33 seconds to 0.17 seconds. Crank it all the way up to warp 5, which at this point in the Star Trek universe, as we quickly learn, warp 5 is pretty standard. You can go faster than that, but it's kind of like driving a car. The faster you go, the more wear and tear you put on the car, the more fuel and gas you use. So there's kind of your typical cruising speed. Warp 5 would be pretty much that at this point in Star Trek. Warp 5 is 125 times the speed of light. You make the same trip from Earth to the Moon now in 0.01 seconds. Increasing to warp 6, we're looking at 216 times the speed of light. It's pretty instantaneous from Earth to the Moon. So it increases exponentially as you go through. We're going to quickly learn warp 5 is pretty standard. Anything above that, we start looking at problems.
Exactly. But Kirk is wanting to encounter that alien ship so bad, he keeps going faster and faster. The alien goes to 6, he goes to 7. And he tells everybody to get to their positions and get ready to attack. And red alert. We come back from a commercial and we're still in hot pursuit of that alien ship. Spock does not have any update though on what alien it is. Like, he just knows about rumors and quote unquote space legend.
Well, they don't know what the alien is. Spock is reporting on the section of space that they're currently in. It's foreshadowing to the next alien race that we're going to meet in this episode. Side note, this portion where Spock is talking about there's nothing known in this sector of space. We only kind of have these legends as a way to allude to the Metreons that we're going to encounter. I've always thought it would be really cool to have some kind of crossover with the themes of H.P. Lovecraft and the old gods and the eldritch gods that dwell and exist in deep space. Some kind of combination. So, network writers and producers, don't steal my idea, but a sci-fi show of space travel where the biggest threat that we can encounter are all of these old gods and elder gods that we would typically see in an H.P. Lovecraft setting. I think that would be a really cool science fiction horror show. So stay tuned, coming to televisions this fall.
Yeah.
From Treks and Tangents.
Whoop, whoop. And we're still running after this ship, though, as we're going through the space. Spock and Sulu are saying, the faster we go, it's getting more unsafe, but Kirk just ignores it and says, get ready for battle.
Right. At this point, we're at warp 7. That's the speed at which they say that the ship can hit that speed, but they can't maintain that speed for long. They're going to start burning out their engines. Again, as reference, we are now traveling at 343 times the speed of light.
My skin is crawling.
And the numbers just get meaningless at this point.
So Sulu reports, though, that they're closing in on the ship, and the navigator is able to see where they're going, but it's uncharted solar systems. But where's the Sal from last episode? They keep changing people. The new navigator is a dark-haired gentleman named DePaul, and he reports that the alien ship has turned away from the solar system. Then Uhura interrupts them, saying that the solar system is scanning the Enterprise. And Spock's like, well, it is interesting. So the solar system continues to scan the ship, while Sulu reports to Kirk that the alien ship they were after is just stopped in space. Kirk is extremely excited that they have caught up to the alien ship, and he tells everybody to get ready to attack. We got him. Suddenly, the Enterprise is pulled from a warp 8 down to a dead stop violently. Like, everyone is thrown forward. They all did a great job at that acting. So they are now held in place just like the alien ship. Even by looking through their controls, everything is normal. They just cannot move anything.
Well, they specifically go through a quick little checklist, and things like life support are still operating. The gravity's obviously still operating. But some of these other systems like weapons and the engines, those are all offline.
And then suddenly on the view screen, instead of like the normal beautiful stars, it's all colorful, and a figure shows up, and they are called the Metrons.
It's not really a figure. It's, again, a funky screensaver from Windows 95.
The Metron talks to the Enterprise, telling them that both crafts are trying to enter their solar system with the goal of violence, which is not permissible.
Right. So we have another example of a reaction to perceived invaders into someone's territory. Much like the aliens thought the Enterprise and the humans were invading into their territory with their colony.
The Metron voice says that they've studied each ship and will have the captains go to a special planet where they both will be able to have life, and they also will have a recording device that will translate what they're saying for both the other captain to hear and future ships. Brute strength against brute strength, he says. Each ship will be unobtainable, and the loser will also have their ship destroyed. And then Kirk disappears. That I Dream of Jeannie disappearance.
They also, the Metrons, mention to Kirk through the view screen before he's transported away to this new location that the planet that they're going to has the resources necessary to create a weapon or to use in this fight.
And then we learn that the alien ship is a Gorn, and they look like walking alligators with glittery eyes.
Yeah, specifically the Metrons in their communication on the Enterprise to Kirk. It's a throwaway line where they identify the aliens as the Gorn, and that's how we as the viewers learn the name of their species. But you're right. Once we're on the planet, we get our first look at them. Giant crocodile alligator looking thing with glittery disco ball eyes, wearing a caveman looking outfit. He would fit in very well with a live action version of the Flintstones. I noted that when we came back from the commercial break and we get this captain's log, this internal monologue that he's given to catch the viewers back up, he refers to his location as being on an asteroid, and everywhere else it's referred to as a planet. So just a weird thing to stick out. I guess he really doesn't know where he is. Maybe he thinks it's an asteroid.
Maybe because it's so barren and it just has lots of different mineral deposits.
But it'd be very unique for an asteroid to have its own atmosphere.
The Metrons are special.
That they are.
So Kirk comes face to face with the other captain. Both are weaponless, but like we said, the Gorn is giant. He is muscular, but he is not agile. They first try to do hand-to-hand combat, and that was not successful at all. Running up part of a mountain, Kirk finds a rock and tries to throw it down on the Gorn, and the Gorn, no response. He's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, it bounces off his chest without effect.
The Gorn then picks up a giant boulder himself and throws it at Kirk, and he misses. On the Enterprise, though, Spock is checking in with Scotty and Uhura. How are their parts doing? And Scotty still is unable to find any alternative options, and Uhura cannot communicate because she's stuck. They're all stuck in the solar system. We're jumping back to the planet, and Kirk is using the recorder device. He's just messed on. Kirk starts to use the recording device that he was given, and he talks about his opponent, who happens to also be listening behind a rock. And he says, while the Gorn isn't agile, he is quite clever. He's also confused how the planet is supposed to offer weapons, but he doesn't see any weapons. He just sees rocks, dirt, and elements, basic elements like sulfur and coal. We pop back up to the Enterprise. They're going back and forth at this time, and McCoy is questioning Spock on what his plan is. How can they help him if they don't know where he is? Back down at that special planet, Kirk is able to find some greenery and tries to make a club to be able to use it against the Gorn. While the Gorn finds vines that he can use as rope. And he's just laughing and he's enjoying himself, I think. And then Kirk walks upon diamonds. And of course, they're gorgeous and they're the hardest material. But how can he use an unfinished diamond to do anything as a weapon? He even says he would trade them all for a hand phaser or a good club. Kirk is still traveling up hills and mountains trying to look for things.
Because he has this ability to outpace the Gorn, as it's been pointed out. The Gorn is extremely slow. The Gorn is comically slow. There's no effort required by Kirk to run away from him and stay out of range to get as far away from him as he can. He can certainly outlast the Gorn.
And the Gorn is happy, though. He's just making all these primitive weapons with what he has found on the surface. Then Kirk finds a boulder himself on the edge of a cliff, and he tries to push it off so it can hit the Gorn to be able to take him out. And success! The Gorn is able to move the boulder from being on top of it and toss it at Kirk as Kirk comes down the hill, but he ends up in a vine trap that the Gorn created.
The vine trap that we saw him making earlier as he was laughing to himself.
And now he hisses. And then we have a commercial break. Coming back from that, we see that the Gorn has created a sharp dagger-like instrument from one of the rocks. He tries to stab Kirk, but because Kirk is so fast, he's able to get out of the way. Meanwhile, on the Enterprise, Spock is continuously trying to contact the Metrons, and they will not talk to him. They refuse to.
Well, I don't know if he's trying to establish a connection to the Metrons or if he's trying to reach out to the Gorn ship
Oh.
as a way to... He's trying in any way, shape, or form to do something.
After getting away from the Gorn on the planet, Kirk is exhausted. I mean, he's already climbed all these mountains and...
Well, and he's burned through all of his stamina fighting out of the vine trap, and now he wrestled with the Gorn and he pushed this giant boulder off. If it was just a matter of endurance and keep away from the Gorn, he could have lasted a lot longer. But he's expended a lot of his energy in this most recent struggle and fight.
But he finds that he is next to a large amount of yellow sulfur, and he's trying to remember why sulfur is so important.
Which begins one of the longest examples in history of foreshadowing leading up to Kirk's final plan. It's incredibly painful to watch, I think.
Back on the Enterprise, the Metrons tell the crew that Kirk is losing the battle on the planet, and they should all start planning for their own deaths. Do whatever they need to do to come to terms with it. But they will let the crew see Kirk die. They're trying to be nice.
Yeah, and so the Metrons pull up on the view screen of the Enterprise Kirk down on the planet so they can watch the rest of this play out. This is very much in line with what we saw with the Menagerie, where we almost get an episode within an episode. We get a lot of shots of the bridge crew of the Enterprise just staring at the view screen watching Kirk. We get a lot of commentary between Spock and McCoy, where McCoy is rooting on Kirk. Spock is starting to see the plan formulate in Kirk's brain, and Spock realizes what Kirk is trying to do.
On the planet, the Gorn is talking to Kirk via the recorder. He's tired of chasing Kirk. He's like, just stay where you are. I'll come to you and I'll kill you swiftly. Easy peasy. He believes he is able to kill humans because they invaded the Gorn's space. That's his justice.
You're referencing that this is the moment where the Gorn explains to Captain Kirk the reason why the Gorn attacked the colony was because the planet the colony was on is in their territory, and they were defending their territory.
Kirk goes back to that super green leafy area that he saw earlier and grabs bamboo, and also makes it a larger club, and then he begins creating his own weapon. It's a hollow tube of bamboo. He has vines, and he is using all those elements he passed, potassium nitrate, sulfur, coal, all in that order, and stuffing them in the tube like a gun with a bayonet. Kirk is creating a cannon.
He's making a cannon that resembles very much like the original mortar with the blue ball. It's a weird little tie-in between the two weapons. Probably a coincidence.
The Gorn catches up to him, and Kirk is able to fire off his cannon. The Gorn falls back, and Kirk runs to the reptile, and he's like almost about to kill him, and then he stops himself, and he yells to the Metron that he refuses to kill the Gorn. This is not entertainment. A Metron appears in a white gown, super young looking, and surprises Kirk. The Metron also has sent the Gorn back to his own ship during this surprise. Kirk says, "You look like a boy," and Metron says, "I'm 1,500 years old. I know more." And he also tells Kirk that it surprises them, the Metrons, that he showed mercy, which is an advanced trait. But if Kirk would like the Metron to do so, they would happily destroy the Gorn's ship. Then they'd be gone. But Kirk refuses.
It's an interesting point of dialogue because the Metron specifically says that he will spare Kirk's life because Kirk showed mercy to the Gorn. But that wasn't the original rules of the contest. The original rules of the contest that the Metron set forth were that there would be a loser. The loser would have their ship destroyed, and the winner would be returned to their ship, and that ship would continue on its journey. So a little contradictory there. We'll get into it a little later.
And the Metron refuses to talk with Kirk about anything. I mean, they still are savage, but they'll be in contact when the humans are finally ready to talk.
Because you're right, the Metron continue to view humans as savage and aggressive, and the Metrons are unapologetic for their decision to have this contest. So they're trying to explain to Kirk that humans are beneath them and they're not willing to have any sort of contact or any sort of formal alliance with the humans until the humans have further evolved in
themselves.
Kirk
then returns to the Enterprise. Uhura asks if he's okay, and he just says, I don't know, but let's get back to our post and let's get out of here. As they're getting back to their post, Sulu notices that the maps have changed. Like the places, Sirius and Canopus, they're in the wrong spots. How did that happen?
It's not on the maps. It's the physical constellations that they're using as a reference point, which is how Sulu comes to discover that the Enterprise is 500 parsecs away from where they were brought to a dead stop by the Metrons.
So Kirk has Sulu chart a new course to Cestus 3, and don't worry about anything. Spock, though, is still curious to know what happened on the planet, which Kirk also refuses to tell him, but he does say humans are still predators, but we're promising nonetheless. Things might change in the next 1,000 years. And then he tells Sulu, take them back to where they were supposed to be via Warp Factor 1.
And roll credits. So, Jaci, what did you think about Season 1, Episode 18, Arena? What are your final thoughts?
I actually enjoyed it. Talking more in depth, I learned a lot more underneath the surface. So I think that was pretty entertaining. I mean, and I did like the Gorn. That I'm glad he wasn't a frog.
And again, my final thoughts. It's an okay episode. It's 2 plot points that are squished together into a single plot point, a single episode. You have the entire Gorn invasion of the colony in part 1, and then you have the contest between Captain Kirk and the Gorn captain. And again, that's the part that everyone remembers, is that physical fight. I don't think casual to any non-diehard fan is going to recall anything else from this episode other than that fight. The appearance of the Metron, the conflict at the colony beforehand. It's really the Gorn fight that everyone remembers. I think they could have done a lot of different things with the plot so that it didn't feel so broken apart. So, again, just a okay episode for me. We'll wrap up our thoughts with our favorite quote from the episode. Jaci, why don't you share yours?
From Kirk, as he is looking at the Gorn captain, he says, like most humans, I seem to have an instinctive revulsion to reptiles, and I definitely relate to that, and especially amphibians.
Yes, Jaci. Fun fact, Jaci hates frogs. We'll just put it that way.
Stay away.
That's why she won't watch The Muppet Show. And that is an interesting quote because he follows it up by talking about how he has to remind himself, despite being revolted by the Gorn, that he has to remember that they are an intelligent species, that they are warp capable, they are intelligent. So it's an interesting quote. My quote comes at the end from the Metron that appears to Kirk and explaining, quote, by sparing your helpless enemy who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy, something we hardly expected. I like the quote because it leads into the hypocrisy, because the next explanation from the Metron is, because you showed mercy, we will spare your life. But again, the original arrangement was whoever won the fight would be spared. Kirk's already earned that. He won the fight. Again, we'll get to it in a moment. But those are our quotes.
We pick good ones.
We do. Tribble tidbits for the episode, or fun facts, and why do we call them tribble tidbits, Jaci?
Because it's tribble.
Because we learn that Jackie doesn't really know what tribbles are. She just thinks they're cute.
Yes, and fluffy.
And she didn't grab the tribble for the recording this time. So,
Say I learned.
originally airing January 1967. The original version, again, we're watching the remastered version on Paramount Plus, but the original version doesn't show the Gorn blinking like it does in the very first moment when Kirk encounters him on the planet. It's literally a tongue-in-cheek blink and you miss moment. The blinking was added as a special effect in the remaster version. It's a slightly controversial addition, at least I think so, because the fact that the Gorn doesn't blink is not something that some might think was a feature of the costume due to lack of ability to make him blink or
Like a mascot.
or budget constraints or anything like that. If you go back and read the original script that was written for the episode, the script specifically calls attention to the alien's appearance, and it references the alien as not blinking as a means of making it appear more fierce and more alien and non-human. So
That's a good one.
there's several conflicting reports that I could find online, but the gist of how the script came about that I seem to find most people agree with, the script was written, again, due to short notice. Other writers had missed a bunch of deadlines. And so the writer, Gene Kuhn, goes home and writes the initial script over a weekend. However, when the script was submitted for review, the script review process revealed that the plot of the episode very closely, almost identically mirrored a short story called Arena, and it was from a 1944 science fiction magazine called Astounding Science Fiction. And Gene Kuhn was also an avid fan and reader of science fiction. So when confronted, Gene claimed that he was completely unaware of the similarities at the time, that his script so closely mirrored this other script, even down to the name. And again, did the name come before? Did the name come after? Lots of conflicting reports. To solve it, the show reached out to the original writer of the short story that appeared in the science fiction magazine, but they kind of pulled the wool over his eyes. Instead of admitting that they've already written this script and they're trying to avoid a lawsuit and buy the rights from him after the script was written, they told him, hey, we really like your story. We'd like to write a script about it for Star Trek.
Oh.
He probably never knew that the wool was pulled over his eyes. He did, without any hesitation or any real pushback, agreed to let them use his story, and he got paid as a writer's credit and got writer's credit for the story. So everything was made right, but a little deceptive. My interesting part that I like the most, again, the Metrons backtrack and tell Kirk that they're going to spare his life because he showed mercy, but he already won the contest. There was dropped dialogue where in the original script, the Metrons admit to Kirk that they had planned to blow up both of the ships, no matter who won the contest. So I think that adds a little bit of depth to the Metron as a species. I think it's very interesting to show that they don't have the most noble intentions at heart anyway, that they also are deceptive, violent, and not perfect like they portray themselves to be. I really wish that was included, that bit of dialogue stayed in the episode and wasn't dropped.
Kind of like Squid Games.
Yes.
They're watching for fun.
Yes. Star Trek Squid Games.
Hey, that's a good crossover.
Coming soon to Netflix. Again, we're looking for sponsors. We'll happily take that. The Gorn captain was voiced by Ted Cassidy, who we all know and love. He's the was he 7 feet tall, but he's the actor who played Ruck in What Are Little Girls Made Of? And he provided the voice of Balok's puppet in the Corbinite maneuver.
That's super cool.
Yeah. This, of course, is the first episode where the photon torpedoes are used and referenced. Again, they become very important in Star Trek lore. William Shatner to this day suffers from tinnitus, which is traced all the way back and is assumed to have been caused by all of the explosive special effects that were used in this episode. He won't be the only actor in the original series that will come to suffer from tinnitus from their work on and being in close proximity to special effects on the show.
It's cursed.
And finally, Jackie mentioned the navigator DePaul. He's a new navigator.
Yes.
If he looks familiar, that's because he also played the disfigured Captain Pike from the Menagerie Parts 1 and 2. He just didn't have white hair, and he didn't have the plasma burns all over his face. The
This is
radiation,
awesome.
sorry, I'm supposed to be the expert. Radiation burns, not plasma.
This is awesome. It's like John Wayne science entertainment, using all the actors for things.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And those are your Tribble tidbits. And we round out the discussion of our episode by our ranking. This is where we assign a rank to the episode. We pretend the episode is a member of our crew, of our fictitious starship, and we assign a rank based on not only how entertained we were when we watched the episode, but also how important of a crew member would it be to the operation of our fictitious starship. A higher rank means we find the episode more entertaining, but more importantly, a more prominent and important crew member to our ship. And a lower ranking means we, of course, weren't as entertained, and they're a disposable crew member. They could wear a red shirt and die off in the next episode. Our ranking system runs from ensign, lieutenant junior grade, lieutenant, lieutenant commander, commander, and then we have our top spots of captain and admiral. We also limit the number of episodes that can hold such a rank. As an example, captain, we only have 1 of 1. We can only have 5 out of 5 commanders, etc. If all of this sounds extremely confusing because this is an audio podcast, we do have a visual representation posted on our Patreon at patreon.com/treksandtangents. We post an updated visual every Wednesday, the day after each episode goes live. So, Jackie, this week on your starship, the USS Galactic Glitterbee, what ranking do you give Arena?
I'm going to put the Arena in my lieutenant spot.
Lieutenant. Why a ranking of lieutenant?
Well, like you had explained, that we have 2 things happening at once, and because they squished them all together, it was hard for me to follow like exactly what was happening. So I think it potentially could have been higher, but for me, I have to keep it down below because I didn't understand all of it.
All right. And for my starship, the USS Cosmic Shark, I'm going to be right in line with Jackie. I'm also going to assign it a rank of lieutenant. Very similar reasons as I've covered before. 2 plots coming together into 1 episode feels very much like they should have been separate episodes and they should have stood on their own for what they were. We could have easily had an episode of similar to the Balance of Terror, the away team down on the planet being attacked by aliens, the Enterprise above fighting off the attacks. It's half of the episode. And then we get this whole other plot point where they're chasing an alien ship. They meet the Metrons. He has this huge fight down on the planet. As influential as it is to pop culture, as much as that fight scene between Kirk and Gorn come up time and time again in other examples, as much as it's lampooned, it's really just not a strong episode for me, period. It's entertaining for sure, but again, it should have been broken up into 2 separate episodes.
Well, he only wrote it in a weekend.
No, he only took a weekend to plagiarize it out of a science fiction magazine.
Exactly.
So, hot take, Arena, a beloved episode, is going to rank pretty middle of the road for us. As of this recording on IMDb, Arena is currently sitting at a 7.9 out of 10.
Oh, they liked it.
I think a lot of the reviews that come from this episode, again, are nostalgia driven. A lot of people, you say Arena, and the first thing you think of, or the first thing that's described to you, is that shot of Kirk and the Gorn and their initial little tussle where they wrestle with each other. The rest of the episode, I think, falls into the background, and no one remembers that takes place more than halfway through the episode. We have an entire plot point behind it of a colony being attacked. We have this whole other edition of the Metron being introduced.
Metron who?
Metron who is going to be the theme. Again, a lot of nostalgia for the episode, but when you break it down and look it over, at least for us, it's going to be middle of the road. We'll be back next week to trek through another episode, and this is where we give a turbolift tease or elevator pitch to next week's episode. This is where I give Jaci the title of the next episode, and Jaci, with no other information, will give a brief pitch to the plot. Really, it comes down to a guess. Sometimes she's pretty good, sometimes
I'm
not so good. So, Jaci, next week's episode is entitled Tomorrow is Yesterday.
This sounds really exciting. So I think the crew will visit a new planet, but I'm going to imagine Dr. McCoy is going to touch something, pick something up, be curious, and that will have like a twist on reality where he's just going to keep reliving his existence until they figure out how to cure it.
And tune in next week to see if Jaci gets her prediction right. If you want more show information, you can find and directly support our podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/treks and tangents. Besides that visual representation of our episode rankings that I mentioned, we will post the podcast itself. You don't have to listen to us on YouTube or Spotify. You can listen to it directly on Patreon. For our crew members, we do also once a month dive into the animated series for Star Trek, where each episode we will break down. It's very similar to the podcast itself, but on a more condensed version. It's a lot more tangents, a lot less Trek, and a lot more fun.
And Tribbles.
And Tribbles. We will get to Tribbles at some point. There are no Tribbles yet in the animated series. So I think we're going to start going out of order to the cartoon too, because some of the episodes of the cartoon are very heavily centric, if not direct sequels to episodes from the original series that we haven't got to yet. We might skip around, so tune in, see what episode we do. We also have posted on there every test episode that we recorded for our podcast. You can get an abbreviated deep dive of the television show Fringe and Stargate SG-1 and see how the episodes themselves influence the final version, or what we call this podcast.
And how well we grew.
You can also follow us on X at Treks_Tangents. We're also on Instagram and Blue Sky at Treks and Tangents, where we try to post other things outside of the podcast, memes, polls, thoughts. So follow along there if you'd like. Jaci, where can people find you and what are you up to?
I am mostly on Instagram as Jaboom, JIBBOOM. I've got tons of things going on there. Music, I'm a musician. I have chronic illness. I have service dogs, fashion, makeup, you name it, it's on there. And I also have a boutique on Whatnot called Glitterbow Boutique. And we'll see you there.
And you can watch me stream a variety of video games over at twitch.tv/PiratePoundTown. I take that content, and on YouTube I post that video game content and other random content on my main YouTube channel, Pirate Pound Town. You can also find some coin collecting and other hobby videos on YouTube by me under my secondary channel, Pirate Treasure Hunting. I post socially on Blue Sky at Pirate Pound Town. And finally, I can be found on Instagram under Pineapple Cannibal. Links to all social media mentioned can be found in the episode description. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's episode. We hope you had fun like we did, and we will see you all next week.
And we'll see you in 1,000 years, Metron.
End transmission.